Hey, what up, y'all? Mr. Cruz here, the littest teacher you never had, back with another video. Today's video, I wanted to take some time to give you guys my thoughts on the most anticipated album of 2019, Jesus is King. Before we get into all that, I wanted to share just a little bit of my history as a Kanye fan and kind of what his music meant to me growing up. Because I got into Kanye, he started coming out and being very popular about around the time I was in high school, probably sophomore, freshman year. But he really revolutionized hip hop as far as like production goes. He revitalized hip hop music with a love for samples. Like, I think if it weren't for somebody like him really coming out and putting old boom bap samples to new age East Coast type beats, we wouldn't have had a huge influx of rappers like Common kind of seeing a rejuvenation or a respark in their career. Talib Kweli, Mos Def, people like Chance probably wouldn't be around today if it weren't for people like Kanye, who kind of brought a lot of the social aspect back to the hip hop game. At the time, it was kind of similar to the way that it is now, where it's really about being flashy. It's really about having lots of money, how many girls you got, how popular and fly you is, how much better you are than somebody else. When Kanye was coming through the ranks, he really brought a lot of social attention and talked a lot about a lot of social issues in his songs that were extremely relevant back then. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I think his first two albums have such a timeless character to them, is because a lot of the content in those songs from his first two albums are still extremely relevant, especially like the social songs. The songs that had a lot of social justice issues in them are still as relevant today as they were back then, which was what, almost 20 years ago. So I've had a really great experience being a Kanye West fan growing up, and he actually inspired a lot for me to start using samples in my songs, and especially start using them the way that he used them, with the whole sped up thing. And there's kind of a history behind the reason why a lot of old school hip hop samples had that sped up voice, and why he used it, had the sped up voices in the pitched up voices in his beats. But he started losing me probably towards after 808s, his 808s album. He kind of started becoming a very hybrid, multi-genre type of artist, and started experimenting with a lot of his song structure and experimented with singing on his songs, which is not a bad thing. More power to him. It wasn't the it just wasn't my type of music. I ain't really it ain't resonate with me, and I wasn't kind of feeling it. So around that time, I started to lose interest in Kanye West as an artist. And of course, started having a whole host of mental issues and stuff going on in his life, and doing and acting in ways that didn't really that I hate to say this, but what I started seeing him acting the way that he did, getting that sort of attention. I don't even know if it was for attention or publicity, like who knows. And obviously, like, knowing now what we knew back then, that he was struggling with mental health issues, he lost me a whole lot, to the point where I kind of despised the guy. And it's weird to say despise the guy, but it's just like I didn't really care about any new music coming out or any kind of controversy surrounding him. Like, I wasn't a diehard fan the way that I was when he first came out. So Kanye's music sort of became what I feel To Pimp a Butterfly was when Kendrick put that out. Like, it was a hip hop artist who put out an album, or let's say hip hop artist. It was a rapper who put out an album that had rap in it, but it wasn't a rap album. That's kind of the way I saw Kanye throughout several of the years. I would say throughout several of the last several. Dang, can I get my words together? Throughout the last several years, like, I felt he was a rapper, a hip hop artist that rapped every now and again. Most of his songs were different. Let's just say it was different. But it wasn't my cup of tea, because I'm a hip hop fan. I like rap. I like, when I throw a song on, I want to hear some bars. I want to hear a catchy hook. I want to hear a dope beat. And that's kind of just what I expect. And didn't get any of that from Kanye, so he lost me as a fan. Of course, he started kind of winning me back with my Beautiful Dark Twisted album. And there was another album that he put out that was really Life of Pablo. When those two albums kind of came out, I was back on the Kanye bandwagon, and then he lost me once again. But all that to say, I anticipated Jesus is King. I didn't like his previous album, Yay, I believe it was. I wasn't really feeling that one. So knowing that he was kind of coming out with something else, I was really excited and anticipating it because from what he made it out to seem, it was definitely expected to be a gospel album or a Christian album, whatever you want to call it. His content was going to be Christ centered. So I was excited about that. And I was excited actually when I heard the album and I was looking through all the credits that Timbaland had a huge influence on the production. Not just influence, but he had a huge hand in the production. And I will talk about that when we get to that point. But that was also exciting as well because at Kanye's, I don't say at Kanye's peak because he's kind of always peaking because he's constantly creating music and his fans and supporters are always behind him. I would say that when it was Kanye, Just Blaze, Timbaland, Neptunes, around that whole era, like the early 2000s to mid 2000s, early 2000s, they were probably the top dogs in my opinion. So to see Kanye and Timbaland collaborating together on a Kanye album, that was super exciting to me, considering the fact that Kanye's production was very different than Timbaland's production. And I love both of them. So to see both of those two styles coming together was really exciting for me. So let's get to the album because I know that's what y'all want to hear about. As far as the album goes, I would say that I turned on the album, saw that there were about 11 or 12 songs. I was going to get started on doing the dishes in my house and I put it on thinking like, okay, well, I can listen to like half of it now and then, maybe half of it later tonight when I'm going to sleep. I heard the entire thing in the time that it took me to clean up my kitchen and do dishes and stuff like that, which was about 20, 30 minutes. So I was a little disappointed that the album was so short. And that's just my opinion. And when I went back to look through it, most of the songs are like 2 minutes long. And I don't know what the deal is with hip hop music nowadays that like songs have to be like 2 to 3 minutes long. But it was disappointing because I wanted more, or I expected and anticipated more. As far as my thoughts on the whole album as a whole, I was largely unimpressed. The production quality, the style of it, it was all really good. It was very high quality, high production value. That was all great. Again, I feel like this is kind of a To Pimp a Butterfly situation where Kanye puts an album out. He's a rapper. He raps very little in this album. That's okay. That's all right. I get it that it was a gospel album. It's a Christian album. So he had a lot of throwbacks to hymns and a lot of singing. And it was very different. It was, in a sense, it was all over the place. And you could definitely hear a lot of Kanye's musical influence and inspiration, especially in regards to gospel music all over it. So like I feel like if somebody's a fan of gospel music, of like gospel choir, chorus music, then you're gonna love this. You're definitely gonna be a fan of it. I was not that big of a fan of it, and a big reason is, well, two things. I feel like Kanye's lyrical content in this album was subpar. He's definitely he's a super witty. We know from history that he can come up with some dope, crazy punchlines, that he's dope and ill when it comes to the metaphors. But we don't get much, if any, of that on this album. The production side, it's a lot of keys, it's a lot of strings, it's a lot of like ambiance type of vibe. There's little to no drums in the entire album, which also kind of stinks. Like to me, that sucks because as a music producer, that's what I look for, and that's kind of what draws me into a hip hop beat either when I'm creating it or when I'm listening to it. Like if the drums are knocking, that is when you can feel it in your chest and everything is just vibing together and the frequencies are all melding together and it's mixed clearly and perfectly. That to me gets me excited, whether or not the lyrics and the content is hitting. Everything else in that song could be trash and ratchet, but if that beat and the drums, all that stuff matches and mixes well together, then I'm gonna love it. And a big part of why I didn't love Jesus is King is because there's little to no drums in any of the songs. It's pretty much an instrumental, somebody playing keys, somebody playing strings or some other instrument, and no drums. But then again, if that's your style, that's your style, and maybe you'll vibe with it. That's one of the reasons why I didn't like it, why it really didn't stand out and resonate with me. Another reason was some of the mixes on some of the songs were, I won't say really bad, but they were bad enough to the point where I thought like if I had those stems, I could have done a better job at mixing it. And I'm by no means a professional. So I understand that there was a time when I think Kanye tweeted out or he posted something on Instagram or whatever about, hey, we're trying to get these mixes right, and you know we want to push the album out and get it out to you guys as soon as possible, but we got to go back and fix these mixes. It's hard to tell what they fixed because definitely there are two songs on there that the mixes were absolutely horrible. I was listening to it, and obviously I was listening to it through like my little Google Home speaker, which is, if you had a Google Home Mini, whatever thing, you know how loud and powerful and how bassy those things can sound. Like you get a really good sound quality from it. A lot of times I use that to reference my mixes when I make my beats. But listening to it on that, it was painful. It was painful to my ears. And then I switched to my headphones, and it was even more painful in my headphones. So the mix was bad, and it definitely took me out of the experience. The other thing why, the last thing of why I think this album was largely unimpressive to me and uninspiring to me was because if I feel like Kanye stans are going to get behind whatever he puts out. It's taking aside the fact that he's proclaiming to be a Christian, that he's saying that he's born again, and that he's from now on only going to be putting out Christian music or gospel music. I'm going to take all that. We'll set it aside. I'll give you my thoughts on that at the end of this video. But taking all of that outside of the picture and not being biased about that at all, if let's say somebody like Talib Kweli put this exact same album out, exact same content, exact same music, executive producers, all that stuff, Talib Kweli did the exact same thing, we would overlook it in a heartbeat. And we would probably not hesitate to say like, yeah, bro, this ain't it. This ain't your best. It's okay. It's kind of cool, but nobody's going to remember it at the end of the day. I feel like because Kanye put it out and because he built up this anticipation for the release date of it, and he had people waiting on the edge of their seats for it, and then the date came and it didn't drop and people were upset, and then he was like, no, we're coming, we're going to fix it, blah, 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 and then they drop it. I feel like because of that anticipation, and especially because of some people who idolize Kanye to the point where they might feel like he can do no wrong as far as music is concerned, that those types of people are going to hear this album and think like it's the greatest album ever created. It's the best thing he has ever put out. Nothing is ever going to touch Jesus is King as musically as an album ever again. And in my opinion, I just don't, again, this is my opinion. I don't think that is true. Because if anybody else put that album out, we would be not very impressed. We wouldn't really think much of it. We'd be like, it's all right. And the reason I think that, and I was kind of thinking to myself about this, is if I was thinking about Kanye's first two albums, Late Registration and College Dropout, which I think personally, in my opinion, are his two best albums that he has ever put out. And then I thought like, okay, if Big Sean put out those two albums, same content, same style, all that jazz, if it was Big Sean's voice instead of Kanye's voice, or if it was Chance, or if, I don't know, if it was Lil Yachty, Big Crit, whoever you want to put, whoever's name you wanted attached to it, if they put that album out, would I still think that that was one of the best albums I have ever heard in my life? And largely, yeah, I would. I'd feel the same way about Jay-Z's The Black Album or Biggie's Life After Death. Whoever I tried to disassociate the name and the brand of that individual who put that album out, and then just think of it musically, like the content, the production value, the sound quality are all of those things in part good enough for me to put this album or this composition or this project on a pedestal. And I think yes. So when I hear Jesus is King and not the content on it, but the quality of the music and the instrumentation and all that stuff, and I just think, all right, if Kanye's name wasn't attached to it, would I really like it? No, I wouldn't. So I don't have this attachment to the Kanye West name to the point where I'm going to look at his album and value it more just because his name is behind it. So that is in large part why I don't know, if I were to put a number value on it, I would probably give it a D. But it's got some slappers. You know, I would say Hands On is probably my favorite. Closed on Sunday is also another good one. The joint he had with Clips and reuniting Clips, like that's a pretty big thing that obviously Kanye is the only person that I could ever imagine to be able to pull something like that off, to reunite Malice and Pusha on a song together and throw Kenny G in there and make it slap. Bruh, like that's pretty dope. So don't get me wrong in thinking that I don't like Kanye or that I hate him or that I'm just bitter about the album. It just didn't resonate with me. I wasn't feeling it. So that being said, I want to get into talks about my thoughts as far as Kanye the individual, Kanye the person, not just Kanye the musician associated with the album Jesus is King. So now I kind of talk about all the opinionated stuff that I have as far as the content, and Kanye now exclusively saying that he's only going to be making Christian or gospel music. All right. But for real here, these are just my opinions and just my thoughts. Don't rake me through the coals in the comments just because I have a thought on something. Because obviously you have your thoughts and you have your opinions, and I respect them. So respect mine as well. So here we go. Now, Kanye has always been a controversial figure in hip hop music. I would say in music in general. And looking back, we understand that he did struggle and he did have mental health issues, which is probably a good explanation for a lot of his questionable and erratic behavior in the past that we can look back on now. That being said, when he proclaimed that he was a born again Christian, that he was only going to focus on gospel music, initially, I was very reserved about it because I remember as a kid, I was a teenager. I remember as a teenager seeing Mace's transformation to leave music to go do ministry, and then leaving ministry to come back and do music, to then go back to ministry to then come back and do music again, and seeing that kind of flip flop. So initially I was questionable about it, and I was doubtful, thinking that, well, maybe it's a kind of a publicity stunt. And I know it's wrong for me to place doubt and lack or doubt his authenticity initially in that moment, but that was just my gut reaction when I had heard that. After a while, and especially after hearing his album, I certainly hope and I am anxious to see how the rest of his career or how his career continues to play out. I hope it's an authentic change and an authentic transformation that's taken place in Kanye's heart, because as a Christian, I would love to see Kanye use a platform that he has to be able to share the gospel. That would be an amazing win for the Christian community. But I just feel like it would be amazing for me as a fan of Kanye, who's grown up watching his rise and fall and his good times and his bad times, and even the times when I was the fan at a distance watching the train wreck. I say I don't know what other word I could use with that. To now be able to see his transformation and see him, hey guys, like this this Jesus that you guys, this message that you guys have been fighting so hard for, like, you guys I have your back now. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. You've got my support. That would be amazing for me as a Kanye fan and as a Christian to be able to see him play out in a radical way. And I think it could also be a good thing to open doors for a lot of other Christian musicians who, in my opinion, have been doing it for a lot longer, but have been doing it better than Kanye has. So I'm excited to see what Kanye's future has for him. I'm definitely hoping that he puts out more music, more gospel, more Christian centered music. I'd be interested to see how he kind of evolves as a musician in that genre now, or in that realm. And I even feel stupid saying in that realm because if I recall, he had like an interview where they were asking him if he was a Christian musician now. He's like, well, I'm just a Christian, whether I make music or not or whatever, I'm just a Christian. So I'm excited for Kanye's future. Hopefully he puts out better music, in my opinion. Hopefully he puts out better music. But overall, I think it's a really great thing to be able to see this guy who I've idolized as far as a musician and as a producer that I've looked up to and that I've borrowed a lot of influence from for a long time, to see him in a way maturing spiritually, because obviously he had his bouts mentally, or even physically. I know he talk about Chick-fil-A closed on Sunday, but he looked like he getting it from somewhere. But seeing him mature and grow spiritually would be an amazing and incredible thing to be able to see. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing we can do as onlookers and as spectators is just sit, wait, and watch and kind of see what happens. Obviously, not to critique him and not to rake him through the coals. As a Christian, got a whole lot of love and respect for him, no matter what. No matter what. As a musician, you could have done better. But again, that's just my opinion. Well, guys, that's what I got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Kanye's Jesus is King album, and if you think his transformation or his declaration of being a born again Christian, like, do you think it's authentic? Do you think, you're kind of questioning it? Are you kind of going to be like me and just sit and wait, keep your mouth shut, just sit and wait and, see how his life and his career and what he does with this proclamation, see how it plays out. Click the link in the description if you guys want to see some more videos, or if you guys want to follow me on social media. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Mr. Cruz out.